Like I have a rule with AE comp plans. If you can't explain it in 2 sentences, it's too complicated and go back to the drawing board. The true brilliance is actually keeping things simple. This notion of being authentic and transparent, being in the details, and being a strong communicator has really helped me scale myself as I've led progressively larger organizations. But there's big difference between communicating transparently once a decision has been taken versus transparently sharing everything that's going up in your mind and all the alternatives. Especially when you're leading a large organization, I think that can be catastrophic.
How would you go about evaluating your team? Make sure that they get it promoted fairly, but it actually helps the bigger picture, the company move forward.
So it depends on what the promotion is. So there's like
Hey Joey, how's it going, sir?
excellent. Happy to be here, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me. All right, before we start, Joey, just tell us a little bit about your background, about your journey. How did you end up in sales and what you're working on these days?
So I think the easiest way to describe myself is the zoom out in my professional ambition, which is to be the best revenue leader in the history of SMB sales. It's all I've done for the last 15 years, and it's all I'll do for the rest of my career. I have done it at help roles, executive sales and operations leadership roles, serving SMB at Groupon, at Houzz, and at Square. I'm excited to talk to you about some tactical examples of what I've done at those places, and for the audience out there listening, how I got into sales to answer the second part of your question. So I actually did an undergrad business degree in Canada. If you would have asked me when I graduated, of all the careers out there, what's the one I was least likely to do, I would have said sales. Because I had this view of like what a salesperson was like an extrovert out there, rainmaker, closing deals. And I didn't understand that there was this whole operational side of sales as well. And I actually, the way I got into sales was I went out of undergrad, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I became a consultant at McKinsey because that just opens more doors. And my second project there, I was dropped in a call center for one of the largest telecommunication companies in Canada. And on that project, I was dropped in the call center. I got a team and I doubled their sales, not from the strategy that we were doing, but from like digging in and common sense changes. And ever since then, I've been hooked. I became known at McKinsey as the $1 million pilot guy. And from that on, all I've ever wanted to do was sales and operations work. And that's how I got into it. Found my passion in my career accidentally, but it's worked out quite well.
This is great, and I'm glad to hear. So tell me, what do you really like about sales that keep you, motivated? Going 15 years is a long time. So tell me your secret.
To me, it's all about helping people, right? If you want to build a great sales team, you've got to make sure that your customers are winning. You've got to make sure that your team is winning, and you got to make sure that the business is winning. And I just don't know of any other job where you get to help so many people on such a big scale. And if you're doing it right, the customers you're selling to, there's a product you're selling that will help them. And when you're doing it in small business like I'm doing, you're selling to thousands of customers a month and retaining tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers and helping them improve their business. And I find that to be incredibly rewarding. And then if you're doing it right, you're changing the trajectory of people's lives that are on your team. You're helping. I have so many stories of people who, when I knew them, started as SDRs or AEs and have now risen up through the ranks and are now doing quite well financially and enjoying professional success, or been people that have started in account management roles that are now directors and VPs or in ops roles. And you get to help people reach their professional ambitions. And so that's what keeps me going. It's the people side of things, and where I excel is bringing structure and discipline and rigor and analytics into that world, along with sprinkle in some leadership, and I'm able to help get winning outcomes for both my customers and for my employees.
I love it. Look, the fact that you can really simplify it, that tells a lot, because we tend to make things complicated when it comes to revenue, like with numbers and technology and tactical approach to things, which is great. Again, it keeps a creative mind going. But
when I started, my first job was at Groupon out of McKinsey, and like I approached everything the way a really smart person would approach running a sales team, and everything was way too complicated. And I've since learned that simplest answer is always the best. And that's always my default. Like I have a rule with AE comp plans. If you can't explain it in 2 sentences, it's too complicated and go back to the drawing board. So the default is should always be simplicity. And the true brilliance is actually keeping things simple.
True that. So let's talk about AE comp, plans because you just brought it up. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw a post that you recently shared on LinkedIn, which I found really interesting. You said there is even bigger motivator for AEs than commission or quota attainment, or something along that those lines. Can you expand on it? What do you mean by that? Can we tie this to what you just
Yeah.
mentioned about their comp plans?
So I think the historical motivator for AEs, like you're talking like 20, 30 years ago, was compensation. And like the idea is like you come to work, you maximize your compensation, you go home. But the majority of sales teams today are made up of millennials. And um, millennials want to make an impact on the world and they want to be recognized by their peer groups and they want to post things on social media about how they're doing at work and progressing. So like commission's important and you got to have an exciting commission plan, but it's not the sole motivator and not the only motivator. And what I've found when you're building a winning culture it's really successful is one, you need a career ladder. You need to offer opportunities for advancement, but not just advancement where change the title, but also the role, there's more autonomy, there's more development, and you get access to more opportunity, especially in the AE world. AEs will work more than anything, and I think the post you're referencing, more than money, more than career advancement, more than recognition, AEs will work harder for access to better leads and more opportunity because they realize it's an easier way to do your job and it's less prospecting and it's also more lucrative and it's the best. So I've built systems where AEs get recognized and promoted, and when you have that progression ladder, as they're moving up, not only do they get more money, not only do they get stock, not only do they get higher commission, but they also get more autonomy in their job, more flexibility, example, like in deal pricing, and then for sure, access to better opportunity. And I'm a huge believer in that. And then the last thing that is, what trumps all of that, what AEs will work the hardest for is winning. And I think it's critical in any place I've been. I try to get what the North Star metric is and have a leaderboard from the best to the worst and make it transparent. But AEs care deeply about their ranking. And I've had more conversations with AEs about what their ranking is in the competition and how they're winning versus how much money they made last year. And because they understand the connection about like what winning means. When you win, the comp comes, and it's something that's more rewarding to tie yourself to. So again, all things align with creating that winning culture that I've found have been successful over the course of my career and made it exciting to be an AE on teams that I've led.
Look, I'm smiling because I can really relate to that. I mean, I've been in the front lines for long enough, and to your point, that insatiable feeling of like I'm doing it, like I'm getting on the chart, and even like it's fine to have a healthy competition with your colleagues. Like,
Yeah,
hey, Joy is just a little bit
yeah,
higher. I'm gonna go a little bit more. It's just
correct.
interesting, that's how you keep that energy and make your work more exciting. Let me ask you something, Joy, about what you just said. How about like very fast growing teams? You've been ahead of sales 3 times and you've seen startups growing extremely fast. How can you really assure that your mid-level leaders apply your strategy and how to keep, AEs pumped about moving forward and win more deals?
Yeah, I think there's a few things you have to do. I would say it's transparency. I would say it is communication, and I would say it's being in the details. So I'm happy to elaborate on those. But
I love
you
to hear.
talked about transparency. I always tell teams that I lead, like I'm giving you the same information I have to make decisions, and I'm going to be transparent and authentic with everything I'm sharing. And I also share the guiding principles that I have on how I lead teams. And when you put all of that out there, it allows people to understand why you're doing the things you're doing and how you make decisions. Because when you lead large teams, what you want is you want to remove yourself from having to make every decision, right?
Mhm.
And that can't happen unless you put out there for the team, what your guiding principles are to follow and get them to believe in it. So that transparency is one. Um, Communication is another. You've got to be able to communicate at the highest level and communicate what that strategy and direction is. But then if you want to scale yourself as things are growing, it's not okay to communicate once a month at an all hands meeting. If things are important, you've got to be out in front of it, and you've got to be communicating weekly. You've got to be showing up in huddles. You've got to be recognizing people who are doing the things you want and becoming that role model. And as the leader of an organization, the culture that you create and the habits you create are an embodiment of what you are doing. And when you demonstrate what you want people to do, they will follow. And then the last thing is being in the details, right? If you sit and create strategy all day, but don't spend time with the team and don't spend time with your reps and your managers, and you don't shadow calls and you don't set time for focus groups, people don't know who you are and what to follow. So I've always made it a habit. I schedule my weeks the opposite way of most heads of sales. I start with, what are my call shadows? What are my huddles I'm going to attend? What are my focus groups I'm going to do? And then you're out there communicating and being in the details. And then as things are happening that are aligned with the strategy and you're seeing behaviors, you can recognize them live. And there's been so many times in my career where I will go and I will recognize someone for doing a great job. I'll write them a Slack. That Slack then gets photoshopped and they send it around to their whole team. And all of a sudden, everyone then wants to do that thing that you've just recognized them for that's aligned with your strategy. So it's all about creating that energy around what you are trying, how you're trying to lead the team. And I found that has worked. This notion of being authentic and transparent, being in the details, and being a strong communicator has really helped me scale myself as I've led progressively larger organizations.
I really love that story of someone actually taking a screenshot and using it to promote an idea. But let me ask you a question. You're talking about transparency and having this ongoing communication, clear communication with your team. Can you remember, or have you been in a situation that things were not, as glorious as they're supposed to be? And how did you communicate this with the team? And should you have actually communicated with the team as a leader, or does it make them worry?
Like, there's been countless times, if you've been in tech in the last 10 years, you've been part of a reorganization, right? And there's been rifts, and I've unfortunately had to lead my team through countless numbers of those at every company I've been at. And I'll never forget my first one, because at that time I got great advice from an executive. This was at Groupon, and he said, he said, tomorrow your team is watching you, and great leaders are going to be out on the floor being extra present with their teams. And you're going to be out there and you're going to show strength and conviction in the company's decision while difficult, and help lead the team through that change. So I've learned that, and I've shared that with all tough times I've gone through. And what I always hold myself accountable to doing, and my leaders, is after a tough decision, like a reorganization or a reduction, is to, one, be the person out there that's communicating, and be, the talking points are the reasons things happen, where you share, this is what happened, this is what we learned from it, this is why we made the decision we did, this is how we arrived at this, and this is our path forward and how it's going to make us stronger. And then making sure that you are available and you are on the floor, or if you're remote, in the chat rooms where you can answer people's questions and reassure them and proactively follow up. But in those times of, I find that as a leader, the best thing you can do in those times of turbulence is to be extra present and to be extra transparent. And instead, most times I find is the natural inclination of most leaders is, in those times when things aren't well, to go hide, or to think about the spin or the talking points to put on it. And it's just not effective. People gravitate towards authentic leaders that they can trust. So that's how I've dealt with it in some specific circumstances, the approach I've taken, which has helped me move forward past some challenging times in my career.
I really love that and I respect it a lot. But sometimes, again, with larger organizations, and correct me if I'm wrong, you might get challenged with HR or legal, whatever. Don't share this, share that. Don't tell them the new, I don't know, wave of layoff is coming. How can we, as leaders, ensure that we communicate this transparently with our team when we have these limitations? Because I've seen this, like in multiple organizations, that the leader maybe wanted to communicate, but they couldn't.
Yeah. So like there's always a time and place to communicate things, and transparency doesn't mean communicating things before they're ready, right? Because like I was in a situation recently where we were thinking about taking a team that was not on variable and putting them on variable, and a leader on my team like went out and proactively communicated that we were thinking about doing this, and it created a massive amount of hysteria on the team. And then people are wondering what's going to happen, and we were on the back foot. That's not transparency, right? There are lots of strategic alternatives you are always considering. That's not like, that doesn't mean share everything that's going on in your head, because that's going to create chaos. To me, what transparency means is once a decision has been made, once you've done something, once you're ready to roll something out, tell people the most candid version of why you're doing what you're doing. I always say, here's the information I have available to me. Here's the benchmarks I looked at. Here's what drove this decision. I'm sharing it all with you because I want you to know that I was incredibly thoughtful in making this decision, and I want to show you the information I have. Maybe you look at this information and you would have arrived at a different conclusion, but I don't want you to presume that I did not do the due diligence and rigor in making this decision. So that's what's up. But to me, there's a big difference between there's communicating transparently once a decision has been taken versus transparently sharing everything that's going up in your mind and all the alternatives. Especially when you're leading a large organization, I think that can be catastrophic in all honesty. And I've seen instances where people think they're being transparent by pre-sharing information, but they're just creating swirl and making people even more afraid or anxious about what a future scenario could look like.
Make absolute sense. Make a lot of sense. So let me ask about like the good parts right now. Just imagine we're not talking about laying off people. Let's talk about internal promotions, because I think you have a lot to share about that as well. How would you go about evaluating your team and to make sure that they get promoted fairly, but it actually helps the bigger picture, the company move forward? What are some of the things that you look for when it comes to promoting internally?
So it depends on what the promotion is. So there's the linear promotions, right? From AE or CSM to higher levels. And then there's like the AE to manager promotion. And I look at different things. When it's the linear promotion, like AE1 to AE2 or AE to senior AE, I always have a two-step system that I found to be effective. One is a quantitative system. So whatever the North Star metric is, a certain percent to goal, you've got to be achieving above a certain amount. Like you don't have to be the best, but you have to be over a certain threshold. And the better you're doing, the more of a chance you have to succeed. It's hard to promote anyone if you're not in the top quartile. It's hard to explain to me why you should be promoted to the next level. And that gets you eligible. Then the second thing I've always done is behaviors. So I've always done interviews associated with that performance and and to get promoted. And what the behaviors are trying to get at is, are you someone that can continue to thrive at the next level? Are you resourceful? Are you coachable? Are you competitive? Are you a great team player? And are you anxious and curious to learn more about the product so you can be even more of an expert? So that's how I've always done those type of linear promotions that I've found to be quite effective. For management promotions, it's a little bit different. What I've tended to do there is not all top reps become managers, but I do believe you have to be certainly somewhat credible. So someone has to be, in my opinion, at least in like the top half of performers before they're eligible for promotion to management. Otherwise, it's really challenging to have to go from working with to managing your peers. But there, it's far more based on the interview process. And we would ask all the typical types of questions that a behavioral interview would ask. But I found the most helpful thing in management interviews is actually doing role plays. So like do a huddle, do a coaching call, and actually seeing someone in action. And what I found, by the way, is that most times people don't get the first management role they apply to. And what I always then look for is how do they respond to that? Do they give up, or do they take on more initiative and put more work in? And then I see how they show up the second time. And what extra things have they done? Like what huddles have they led with their teams? What coaching? What mentorship? And then how much better are they the second time they've gone through the process? And it's that growth that I'm looking at. And if you see people are growing, then you know they're going to get better. And then those are the types of people that are investing in themselves and being accountable and resourceful that I want as leaders on my team. And I found that to be a pretty effective recipe.
I love it. And you basically choose by putting into right actions. So come and do role play, show me what you can do today. And then even if you fail, are you going to give up, or are you going to go get better and apply your practices with your team and show some result and then come back? I love that.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai.
Anyone that I've ever interviewed for leadership roles that's high potential, I always meet with them after if I decline them and tell them why. Here's what you did really well. Here's some areas of opportunity. Let's talk about a plan, right? Because I know I want people to hear it from me. I want them to hear the feedback directly, but then I also want them to start to build a plan, and I want to see it, then how they're going to progress and do great things.
I love it. And that's how you basically build that coaching culture.
Yeah.
And I'm as a leader of a pack, I give you feedback, I give you a path to get better, not just to say, hey, you're not ready today and go figure things out on your own.
Correct.
Okay, let's talk about AEs actually getting promoted to more senior, let's say, positions without being, biased about our decision, because maybe they have a bad day. Maybe they do a bad interview. How can we really track things beyond, metrics? You said coachability, said having this curiosity. How could you learn that they actually, they're ready for the next level in their career?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like with AEs or CSMs being promoted, I've often found we put less value on the interview. A lot of those skills are actually done through research. So whenever someone comes up for an interview, yes, we look at their metric, or for a promotion, we look at their metrics, but they also need an endorsement from their manager. And then we then assess, we speak to a number of managers who have dealt with them and a number of people in ops, and we get a full 360-degree picture of this person's performance, their attitude, their coachability, and that's where we get it from. So I've often spent less time in interviews on those topics for linear promotions like that for AEs, and more time just getting a picture, because that's how you get the bias out. That's how you get, did they have a good day or a bad day? You go speak to a cross section of people about, like, more than the numbers, what's the character of this person, and the potential and the intelligence and the work ethic. And I found that to be far more effective.
I love it. So it's not only about managers, saying
No.
like, this guy is great. You have multiple people.
Now their manager is the most important person, right? Yeah. But then I also would turn to their manager's manager, like the head of the department.
Yeah.
Like, do you endorse this? And then their ops partners, and then sales engineers or AMs they've worked with. Like, you've got to go broad and find a large group of people, because I think what people also forget, like when you promote someone, you're communicating to everyone else, like, this is the type of employee we admire and want. And when you promote the right people, other reps then are motivated to work harder. When you promote the wrong people, it's a crapshoot and you create a problem. And one of the things I know I've always done is when I go places, I've always looked at like who's getting promoted. And if I don't agree with who's getting promoted, that's I don't want to be there. Like I'm not aligned with the values. I'm not, and I may not believe that this place is a meritocracy. So it's really, really important to make sure that you're promoting the right people. Where I've seen it done wrong the most is when people are getting promoted because the org is afraid they're going to quit, and then they're giving like promotions out of fear, and it just like when you start to do that and you promote the wrong people, then you create this permeating issue through the company where the wrong people are being recognized and people lose faith.
That's very, very smart because sometimes leaders don't hear this straight, but being behind closed doors, AEs, because I was a seller, we sit down and chat, the guy really, really deserved it. He earned it. That's a great, way to show respect to your, AE org because this guy has been killing it. But sometimes you see people get promoted and nobody wants to talk about them. Like, how come that happened? So I'm very aligned with what you just said. So what's the, North Star metric for you, putting the attitude and behavior aside? What is it that we need to look for when it comes to promoting AEs?
So for me, it's whatever their percent to quota is, because your percent to quota should align with the North Star metric for the business. And if you've done it correctly, the people who are doing better on that are better reps, and the people who are doing worse on that are worse reps. So if you don't have faith in your own quota system and your percent to quota as being your North Star metric, you got to go re-examine your quotas and the metrics you're using.
Can we talk about that? Can you give us an example when you were in an organization that you noticed, okay, the numbers don't really add up, and what was the root cause of that, and how did you change them? If you have any examples you can share.
Yeah, there was a company I started at, and when I started, I was announced as the head of sales, and in the first week, 7 different reps came up to me and all told me they were the number 1 rep. And I was like, how can this be 7 number 1 reps? And then I went and I looked at the dashboards, and 1 rep was the top on MRR, 1 rep was the top on logos, 1 rep was the top on some other definition of MRR. Then there was a monthly winner, a quarterly, and there was just so many definitions of success out there that it was unclear on who's winning and who's losing, right? And like the analogy is, at the end of a sports game, how crazy would it be if both teams said they won, right? Like it just doesn't make sense. In a baseball game, you like one team said they won because they scored more runs, and another team said they won because they had more hits. Like it's crazy. And so at this organization, it was really challenging, and there was one way to get promoted. There was a different way to get fired. There was a different way to get you paid on commission, and there was different metrics for contest. It was like you couldn't keep up with the complexity that was created. So what I did was I deprecated all the metrics and went to our founders and our CFO and said, like, what's the one metric that's the North Star that we're going to build around? And we created it, and we created we built that metric, and then I went to the team and said, this is the most important metric. This is the reason it's the most important is for these reasons, and this is why it's aligned with our customers. This is why it's aligned with our long-term vision and our shareholders, and that's why I'm holding you accountable to it. If you do this well on it, this is how you get promoted. If you're below these levels, this is how you go on a performance plan. You will only use this metric for contests, and it will align with your pay. And the better you do with this, the more you'll win. The worse you do with this, the more you'll lose. So it became a very clear way to manage the business, and it was successful for us. And then we only had one person who was the best every single year.
This is really, really interesting. So what were the ripple effects of this announcement? So because everybody thought they were superstars, right? I'm number 1 rep. So that's how I presented myself.
Yeah.
Maybe the data. I'm just curious.
There's relief, right? Like you know when you're in a crazy situation. Like reps, they know when there's multiple metrics and things are confusing, and where you can't really compete. And I knew it would be a positive announcement. I never make big announcements without focus grouping them first and understanding. And one of the things I've learned over time is that when you're the leader of a sales team, your customers are your reps. And you better not be announcing something unless you know how they're going to react. And really every announcement you should be making them happier, because it should be making their job easier. So I had a good sense from focus grouping it and helping co-build it with them and hearing what their motivations were, how the announcement would go, and it went really well when we announced it.
And I think that sets the standard, because if the leader can connect with, their reps, to your point, these are your internal, customers, and it shows like the level of expectation from, the reps or in the front line with the customers. All right. Look, Joey, my last question. I was checking your LinkedIn and you mentioned something about your biggest corporate fear. Can we talk about that as well?
Yes. Was this the one when it's about becoming an ivory tower executive?
Yes.
Yeah. When I was coming up in my career, I just saw so many executives who were disconnected from the business, and they would go announce a change, and we would all then go on like a coffee break and be like, can you believe what they did? Right. And like my fear was always being this faceless corporate executive who didn't know what their team wanted and was rolling out changes or updates that just weren't aligned with what the team needed or wanted. And so that's why, and I said earlier today, like I schedule my week backwards for most corporate executives and most heads of sales, where I figure out first, how am I going to spend time with the team? How am I going to get involved with the team and hear their feedback? And if the reps are your customers, you've got to be speaking to them to understand what it is they need to do their jobs better and how to win for them. And so, I really try to live the opposite of my corporate fear every day, and connect with the team. I think there was a job I had started recently, and my onboarding plan for in my first 3 days, I spoke to no reps, no managers. I was just speaking to other executives, and I was sitting in my home office. On the fourth day, I said, time out. Like, this onboarding plan doesn't work for me. I need to go visit offices immediately. Like, when can I go see people? I need focus groups. I need call shadows, right? Like, I've started at this company. I've now been here for a number of days and no one has heard anything from me. Like, that's a problem, right? Because I don't want to become a they. I don't want to say, have you heard about what the new guy did? Can you believe what they did? Like, that's not what you want. You want people referencing you by name. You want people believing in you. You want ultimately, when you're the head of a department, you want people wanting to win for you. And I love it when someone makes a sale. I want them, one of the first things they think about to be, I hope Joey saw that, and I hope Joey's proud of me, because that is effective. And that, to me, is what getting out of the ivory tower means, and being in the details with your team and creating a winning culture.
I love this, but I want to hear from you. Why is it important that Joey should, approve someone's winning?
Not approve it, but I want them to see me being proud of them, because I'm the leader, right? Anyone on your team, they have choices about where to work, right? And if they choose to work in my department I lead, I would love for them to, admire me and want the strategy that I set out for them. I would like it to inspire them. The culture, I would like it to inspire them. The systems, I would like them to believe that it helps them win. And then because of that, I would hope that they want me to be proud of them when they do things that are performing well in the work that I'm doing. Just as I care deeply about them being proud of the organization, and I work really, really hard for them to be proud of me as their leader, and I seek it and I ask them for feedback, and it's a two-way street. So if I care so deeply about them being my customers and wanting to work hard and wanting them to be proud of the job I'm doing, I want that that emotion to be reciprocated, and I want them to feel the same way. And again, it's part of being on a great team. Like, you want the people, we're all on a team at the end of the day, and you want to all be seeking the admiration of the folks you're working with and seeking their acknowledgement. And that's the type of stuff people work really hard for and really efficient. It's less effective when they make a sale and all they're thinking about is how much money they just made for themselves, right? Like, and they can get that anywhere. But it's that, like, It's that desire to, it's the desire to inspire those around you and to try to gain the admiration of your coworkers and your leaders and your subordinates that I think makes great winning cultures come to life.
I really love this, and I tell you why. Because it's famous. We all know it. It's a saying that, hey, people don't quit jobs, they quit bad leaders, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think the main reason why people want to, make sure that you're proud of them, because you get close to them. So as a CRO, I work with multiple different leaders. Some people really care truly. They take one-on-one with you, even at 200, 300, sales organizations, if you struggle, or if you need even like some inspiration. But this is a really, really hard job, especially someone as a CRO, needs to, deal with the board, with the CEO, with tons of other things that, he or she is running. How do you ensure that you have even enough bandwidth to really get to know people on a one-on-one basis?
Schedule it backwards. I schedule my weeks out with that time recurring. I schedule out, and then I schedule my trips out, and then I block time. Whenever I do site visits, I try to get out of all executive meetings and just focus on time with the team. There's nothing worse than you go to a site visit and you spend the whole day not with the team because you're communicating how little importance they are. So I don't know. I force it into my calendar to spend time with the team, and like it's what I love to do anyways. It's where I get energy. What are my favorite days at working anywhere? It's the days I spend time to the team. What are the days I have no energy at the end of the day and wonder why I'm doing what I'm doing? It's the days I'm in like 10 hours of back-to-back executive meetings. So it's like, from a time management perspective, it's obvious to me what I should be doing and where I should be spending my time.
This is amazing. Really do appreciate you. Enjoyed the conversation. Joy, if someone wants to reach out, first and foremost, can they and how?
Best way is LinkedIn. I'm on there, Joey Nalevka. I post frequently, and I love connecting with folks on there.
Awesome. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed too. Until next time. Bye for now.